Life inevitably confronts us with one important truth. People come and go. We form connections, build relationships, fill our hearts with emotions, and become attached to others. These connections become part of our identity, and we often fail to notice how they impact our emotional state. But what happens when those bonds break? How do we cope with the emotional shock when someone loses their place in our lives, or when we realize that this person was never as attached to us as we were to them? In such moments, many of us begin to ask questions like, how do I stop worrying? Or, can I emotionally detach without losing a part of myself? These thoughts can be overwhelming, but here is where Stoicism, particularly the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, offers us valuable tools for managing our emotions. Stoics were true masters in understanding human feelings. They did not shy away from emotions, as many of us do. Instead, they learned to use them to their advantage. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It is a path to regaining control over our inner world, achieving clarity and harmony. It's like learning to swim in the turbulent sea of emotions without losing balance. In this video, we will discuss 5 timeless Stoic principles that can help you emotionally detach from others, using the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius as our reliable guide. These tips are based on practical experience and aim to change your perception of yourself and those around you. Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstances, you will learn to manage your emotions and find inner peace, even when relationships fall apart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and let's embark on this journey toward emotional freedom and harmony together. Rule 1. Understand the impermanence of life. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, reminds us of an important aspect of human existence. Everything we hear is merely an opinion, not an immutable fact, and everything we see is a perspective, not an absolute truth. In the realm of emotional attachments, we often become fixated on our perceptions of others, creating narratives about their significance in our lives. But it's worth considering, are these connections truly as solid as they seem? In reality, all relationships are transient. One moment you may feel closeness and support, and the next you may realize that this person no longer holds an important place in your heart. The reasons can vary: distance, death, or simply the natural fading of intimacy. People come and go, and while this may seem bleak and overwhelming, it embodies the first rule of Stoicism regarding detachment. Embrace impermanence. When you start to recognize that no connection is permanent, you become more mindful of the present moment. It's akin to trying to hold on to a handful of sand at the beach. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. This is a universal law of life. The more we try to possess something or someone, the quicker they fade from our lives. Reflecting on my own experience, I realize I had a friendship that lasted over 10 years. We shared everything: dreams, fears, late-night conversations that stretched into the early morning. Yet over time, something changed. No matter how hard I tried to maintain that connection, the distance between us only grew. The emotional investments I made felt like a chain, binding me to someone who no longer reciprocated the same feelings. It was only when I accepted that the friendship had run its course that I could finally release that emotional weight. I understood that as much as I wanted to hold on to the past, it was important to let go. Marcus Aurelius would likely have advised me to accept that everything eventually ends. This understanding not only alleviates suffering, but also allows us to live more fully in the present. Embracing impermanence is the key to emotional freedom. When we realize that each moment is unique and that people come and go, we begin to appreciate every encounter and every moment. This opens us up to new relationships and experiences instead of clinging to the past. Thus, this first rule of Stoicism is not just a philosophical idea, but a practical guide for living. Embrace impermanence, and you will see your life become richer and more fulfilling, while the pain of loss becomes less acute. Ultimately, this will help you find inner peace and harmony. Rule 2. Master your emotions through rational thought. There is a common belief that emotions govern our lives. When we experience pain, sadness, or anger, it seems like a natural reaction to emotional attachments. However, it is important to recognize the hard truth. Emotions are not reality. They are the result of our thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations of events. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics deeply believed in this principle. We are not at the mercy of our emotions. Our emotions are influenced by our thoughts. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, he wrote. Emotional detachment begins with the understanding that your mind can control your emotional state. Your thoughts about someone can either spark a storm of feelings or calm that storm. For example, imagine you receive negative feedback about your work. Your first reaction might be deep hurt and disappointment. You start to replay thoughts in your mind. Why me? Is this fair? Or what is wrong with me? However, Stoic philosophy encourages you to shift this perspective. Instead of allowing your emotions to control you, ask yourself, what are the facts? Or how can I think about this differently? It is crucial to choose thoughts that free you from emotional suffering rather than those that fuel it. Consider how you react in challenging situations. When a conflict arises with a loved one or you feel ignored, what do you do first? You interpret the situation and assign it meaning, but it is not the event itself that causes emotional turmoil. It is how you perceive it. Marcus Aurelius noted, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," emphasizing that your emotions are directly dependent on your internal dialogue. Imagine you send an important message to a colleague and wait a long time for a response. As time passes, you begin to worry. Did I express my thoughts incorrectly? Do they not want to work with me? With each passing minute, anxiety, irritation, and perhaps even anger build up. But what is the reality? Is it the delay in their response that causes your emotional storm, or is it your interpretation of their silence? The Stoic response is to challenge this automatic emotional reaction with rational thought. What are the facts? The fact is that they have not responded. Everything beyond that is mere speculation. Instead of letting your emotions spiral out of control, you pause. You recognize that your feelings of anxiety or rejection are not rooted in reality, but in your own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius advises, question your thoughts. Do not simply accept them as truth. I once found myself in a similar situation. I was communicating with a colleague about an important project, and suddenly they stopped responding to my messages. At first I did not think much of it, but as hours passed, I began to feel anxious. Maybe they are unhappy with the project. Did I say something wrong? By evening, I was ready to believe that our collaboration was in jeopardy. My emotions were all over the place: worry, guilt, irritation. But when I paused to analyze what was actually happening, I realized nothing serious had occurred. My colleague was simply busy with other matters. When I reached out to them the next day, they responded without issue, completely unaware of the emotional storm I had put myself through. In that moment of clarity, I remembered Marcus Aurelius's words. Focus on what is within your control, your thoughts, your actions, not on the outcome or the feelings of another person. By redirecting my mind, I learned to free myself from emotional turmoil. Rule 3. Practice negative visualization. Now we will discuss a concept that may seem unusual, perhaps even strange. Negative visualization. At first glance, This may appear to be a counterproductive practice. Why would anyone intentionally imagine the loss of something or someone they are attached to? Doesn't that just add unnecessary stress? In fact, this Stoic exercise, advocated by Marcus Aurelius, is one of the most powerful tools to help us emotionally detach. The essence of negative visualization is simple, yet profound. By imagining the worst-case scenario in advance, we reduce its emotional impact when or if it actually occurs. This doesn't mean we become fatalists or pessimists. Rather, it allows us to accept reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not disturb yourself by imagining the whole of your life's troubles at once. Instead, as each arises, meet it with calmness and self-control." For example, consider a work situation. You are very attached to your current position and the team you work with. Now visualize that you have lost your job. How does that feel? Scary? Uncomfortable? That is precisely the point. The Stoics believed that by confronting the emotional discomfort of loss in our minds, we reduce its power to devastate us in reality. I remember practicing this during a time when my company was going through difficulties. At that time, I was deeply attached to my team and felt that losing my job would be catastrophic. But instead of suppressing that fear, I embraced it. Every day, I imagined what life would be like without this job, how I would seek new opportunities, how I would develop my skills, and how I would find joy in new endeavors. When my job was actually at risk, I was not blindsided by fear or despair. The loss was still painful, but I had prepared myself in advance, which significantly eased the transition. Another important aspect of negative visualization is the realization that loss is a natural part of life. Everything you cherish will one day be gone, whether due to separation, change, or death. This should not be a morbid thought, but rather a liberating one. When you stop expecting permanence, you stop feeling entitled to it. And when you stop feeling entitled to something, the fear of losing it diminishes. Take friendship, for example. Many of us, when we make friends, assume that these relationships will last forever. We don't plan for things to change. But the truth is, nothing is guaranteed. Instead of clinging to the false hope of permanence, the Stoic approach is to appreciate what you have while you have it, knowing that it will eventually change. This shift in perspective can be incredibly freeing. I recall a friendship where I was constantly worried that it might end. Thoughts that my friend might move away or lose interest in our relationship consumed me. However, when I started practicing negative visualization, I stopped obsessively trying to control the outcome. I imagined life without this friend, and while it was painful, I realized that every moment spent together was a gift. When our paths eventually diverged, I found myself more prepared than I ever thought I would be. The true gift of negative visualization is that it strengthens our inner resilience. By repeatedly envisioning worst-case scenarios, we develop an inner stability that is hard to shake when life changes. We learn that no matter what happens, we will be okay. And this is the highest form of emotional detachment, not from life, but from the illusion that we need things to stay the same in order to be happy. Let us practice negative visualization to become more resilient in the face of life's challenges. This doesn't mean we should live in fear or worry, but rather learn to accept reality and appreciate what we have. Thank you for your attention. Rule 4. Focus on what you can control. One of the key teachings of Stoicism that can transform your perspective on life is the important distinction between what you can control and what is beyond your control. This understanding is particularly relevant when it comes to emotionally detaching from others. Why is this so important? Because much of the suffering we experience in relationships arises from our attempts to control situations and people, which is simply impossible. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, emphasizes that we should focus only on what is within our control, our thoughts, actions, and reactions. Everything else, including the behavior of others, the outcomes of various situations, and the passage of time, is beyond our influence. The more you try to control what you cannot influence, the more you will suffer. Emotional detachment does not mean distancing yourself from others. Rather, it means freeing yourself from attachment to outcomes that you cannot dictate. When you are emotionally attached to someone, whether it is a close friend, a business partner, or a family member, it is natural to want to influence their perceptions and feelings. You want them to value you as much as you value them. However, it is crucial to understand that you cannot control their emotions. You cannot make someone support you, love you, or respect you in the way you expect. The only thing you can control is your own reaction to their actions. Think of a time when you tried to change someone's feelings or behavior. Perhaps you were trying to win the trust of a colleague who seemed indifferent, or you were striving to meet the expectations of a boss who was never satisfied. How did that affect you? Most likely it brought you disappointment and a sense of helplessness, as you were seeking something that was beyond your control. In one of my projects, I encountered a situation where the team showed little interest in my suggestions. I put in a lot of effort to organize meetings and communicate my ideas, but it felt like my efforts went unappreciated. I experienced anxiety, trying to control how I was perceived. However, when I began to adhere to the Stoic principle of focusing on what I could truly control, my actions and internal state, I was able to let go of that anxiety. I realized I could not force the team to appreciate my work. I decided to concentrate on what I could control, and this brought me immense relief. Embracing emotional autonomy is one of the most liberating steps you can take for yourself. It is the realization that your happiness and emotional state do not depend on the actions of others. When you make your emotional well-being contingent on external factors, you lose your power. You become dependent on the moods, decisions, and actions of those around you. Imagine being in a friendship where you feel ignored. Your friend has stopped giving you the attention they used to, leading you to feel hurt and confused. You start to wonder what you might have done wrong, but it is essential to remember their behavior is not something you can control. The only thing within your power is your reaction. Would you rather spend your energy on someone who does not appreciate you, or would it be better to focus on nurturing the relationships that bring you joy? By focusing on what you can control, your emotional state, you begin to reclaim your power. You no longer wait for approval from others to feel whole. Instead, you create your own inner world, independent of external circumstances. In my life, I have experienced moments when I relied too heavily on the opinions of others. If someone was cold, I felt insecure. If they were attentive, I felt valued. This was emotionally exhausting. However, by applying Stoic principles, I made a conscious decision to stop tying my self-worth to the behavior of others. I focused on my inner well-being, which did not mean I stopped caring. It meant I no longer allowed others to dictate my internal landscape. The ultimate goal of emotional detachment is not indifference, but acceptance. Acceptance of the unpredictability of life and people. No matter how much we wish to control everything, it is impossible. We can only accept reality as it is, rather than how we wish it to be. Imagine you're going through a breakup with a close person. You feel lost, upset, and overwhelmed. Your thoughts are filled with questions. What if I had acted differently? Why did this happen? Can I change anything? These questions are entirely natural, but they stem from a desire to control what has already occurred, a longing to change the past. Instead of tormenting yourself with "what if," a Stoic approach suggests accepting the reality of the situation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Obstacles are not hindrances, they are opportunities for growth. When you accept what is beyond your control, you stop wasting energy trying to change the past and begin to focus on how to move forward. During one of the most challenging periods of my life, I experienced a painful rupture with a friend I considered close. Initially, I was obsessed with understanding the reasons behind what happened and what I could have done differently. However, I gradually realized that the only path to inner peace was to accept the situation as it was. I could not change the past, nor could I control how the other person felt. But I could control my reaction to this loss. Instead of clinging to what was lost, I accepted the reality of the present moment and found strength in that acceptance. Rule 5. Look at life in a broader context. When you are immersed in the emotions of a relationship or a difficult situation, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. Stoic philosophy, especially through the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, urges us to step back and reflect on the broader context. Aurelius often emphasized that our problems, fears, and desires are merely fleeting moments in the infinity of time. By adopting this perspective, emotional detachment becomes easier. Ask yourself important questions like, will this pain matter in 5 years? Or, does this person define my whole life? Shifting your focus from immediate emotional turmoil to a higher level of reflection helps you realize that most of your distress is tied to temporary circumstances. Stoicism reminds us that no single person or event should wield such power over our emotional well-being. When you become overly attached to someone, it's easy to make them the center of your universe. Your happiness and self-worth can become dependent on their presence or absence in your life. However, taking a step back and viewing the larger picture reminds you that life is constantly changing, and relationships, no matter how intense, are just one part of your journey. You are a whole person with your own unique story and experiences. In moments of breakup or emotional conflict, it can be challenging to grasp this perspective. However, reflecting on the broader picture of your life helps you understand that you have survived emotional storms before. Life moved on, and so did you. Recall situations when you felt on the brink of collapse, whether it was losing a job, ending a friendship, or failing in a significant project. Those trials healed, and you emerged stronger and wiser. This is the natural order of things. For instance, imagine a scenario where you didn't get accepted into your dream university. At that moment, it may have seemed like your future lost its meaning, and you fixated on your failures. Yet, as time passed and you looked back, you realized that this was just one stage of your journey. Your education and career do not hinge on a single outcome. They encompass many other opportunities and lessons. You started to see this situation as just one chapter in the larger narrative of your personal growth. Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, emphasized the transience of all things, relationships, emotions, and situations. Everything in life is temporary, and what truly matters is how we respond to these inevitable changes. By reflecting on the bigger picture, you cultivate a sense of inner peace, knowing that life will continue to flow despite your temporary attachments. This broader perspective allows you to emotionally detach, not because you don't care, but because you understand that excessive attachment to fleeting things only leads to unnecessary suffering. Emotional detachment is not indifference. It is the understanding that life is much larger than any single person, relationship, or moment of pain. By viewing your life as an expansive web of connections and experiences, you liberate yourself from the narrow vision that emotional attachment can create. Ultimately, emotional detachment is not about shutting down your emotions or isolating yourself from the world. It is about building resilience and gaining control over how you respond to life's inevitable changes. The Stoic path offers not a quick fix, but a journey toward inner peace. By embracing impermanence, mastering your emotions through rational thought, and reflecting on the bigger picture, you will find that emotional detachment is an act of self-liberation. So the next time you feel yourself clinging too tightly to someone or something, ask yourself, do I control my emotions, or do they control me? Emotional freedom awaits those who dare to let go. In our journey, we explored 5 important rules that will help you attain inner peace and independence from external circumstances. Each of these rules is interconnected and supports one another, forming a holistic approach to emotional well-being. By applying these principles in your daily life, you will not only reduce levels of stress and anxiety, but also learn to appreciate every moment, regardless of the circumstances. Emotional freedom is not an end goal. It is a path worth taking. Thank you for being with us today. Don't forget to share this video with those for whom this topic is relevant. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new materials on Stoic wisdom. Dear friends, allow yourself to let go, and you will see how new horizons for happiness and fulfillment will open in your life.